Street Fighter is known for its incredible characters, from karate masters to mystical warriors and meteor punchers. Yeah, it gets pretty wild, but today I'm ranking the weakest characters, which is no easy task, since most Street Fighter characters are legit. Even the goofy ones are technically world-class fighters, but there are a few select warriors in this series who genuinely suck. Keep in mind though, I'm only focusing on playable characters, so I can't include losers like this, who are definitely weak but never playable in the actual games. But hey, sometimes the weaker characters are still really fun and interesting. So let me know which Street Fighter is your favorite in the comments down below. Then leave a like in their honor. Also, make sure to subscribe if you love Street Fighter, because I'm gonna keep making fun videos like this one. And alright everyone, without any further ado, let's begin. Alright, here we go, ranking the weakest Street Fighter characters. The top row is the weakest, and then it gets stronger as we go down. Alright, easy enough, but keep in mind they're all losers. Even the bottom row has some real goofballs in it, hence the name. And normally I'd save the weakest character for last, but today I'm making an exception, because Dan Habiki is one of my favorite Street Fighter characters, and I want to gush about him a bit. Because yes, he might be the weakest character canonically, but also the guy has tons of depth. For example, he once accessed the Dark Hado. Yeah, the same energy Akuma uses to become really powerful. Dan Habiki tapped into that once, which is already crazy, but it gets crazier because get this, Dan also did the Raging Demon. Yeah, the move that destroys your soul and kills pretty much any fighter instantly. Dan Habiki did that move. Now, unfortunately, he tripped over a purse or something, then fell on his face like a big loser. And that's because Dan has what I call reverse plot armor. No matter what this man does, he can never win. Even with the Dark Hado on his side and a Raging Demon in his arsenal, the man could not land a hit. So yeah, it's reverse plot armor. Picture the opposite of a main character. That's Dan Habiki, alright? The writers will never allow him to succeed because he's meant to be a loser. That's the joke. In fact, you could argue Dan is unable to win any important fights because the universe itself won't let him. It's his role in the story to be a loser, which is unfortunate. But for a fun fact, in Street Fighter V, for a short bit, Dan Habiki was actually top tier, and that's because the guy had an infinite, like straight up. Yeah, his combo went on forever until the opponent died. Dan Habiki had the best combo in Street Fighter V for a short bit. But alright, next up is the very weak tier. Julie and Junie are going here. That's right, because they tag team the opponent. Unlike everyone else in the series who does a fair 1v1 fight, except Armika in Street Fighter V, but that's a V-trigger, okay? She gets a pass. Because so many characters had busted V-triggers in Street Fighter V, okay? It was such an unfair mechanic, which is why I'm giving Armika over here a pass, alright? But Junie and Julie do not get a pass. They straight up double team the opponent in Street Fighter Alpha, which shows you they've got zero confidence in their own abilities as martial artists. They know they can't win without teaming up against the opponent. Now don't get it twisted, from a gameplay standpoint, these characters are fun. Controlling two characters at the same time is very interesting, and real talk, I kinda wish Capcom would bring it back for Street Fighter 6. However, from a lore standpoint, Junie and Julie are very weak. One of them's in the Street Fighter movie and getting her butt kicked the entire trailer. So yeah, that's why these two are going in very weak. Out of everyone else in Street Fighter, only these two characters double team the opponent, and it's because they're weak. But next up, we have the Jobbers tier. These characters exist only to lose, which is ironic because one of them is a Heavenly King under M. Bison. Yeah, you know, the main villain of the entire series. Maybe you've heard of him. One of his 4 Heavenly Kings is an absolute jobber, but for now, ow, I banged my wrist. But for now, let's talk about 11 and 12. I love 12 as a character. He's super fun to play, very interesting, but lore-wise, he's one of the weakest characters in Street Fighter. His main gimmick is copying the opponent's moves, because at least then, he's no longer 12. Yeah, in other words, this guy sucks. His best hope of winning is to copy the opponent because he kinda sucks. However, at least 12 has his own moveset on top of the copy ability. 11 does not. First introduced in Street Fighter V, this guy's the alpha prototype of 12, and unlike 12, he can't even use his own attacks. That's right, instead he turns into the opponent right away and stays that way the entire match. However, he's a weaker version of the opponent. So yeah, these two characters are a little bit different, but both of them are going in the Jobbers tier, along with Poison. I like this character, I find her interesting. Her attacks are neat, especially her weapon, very unique to be sure. However, from a lore standpoint, Poison is very weak, which is why she hides behind stronger characters like Hugo, often commanding them from the background and making them do her dirty work, because while she is strong compared to regular humans, against Street Fighter characters, she's nothing special. So yeah, she tends to hide in the background and have much stronger characters do her dirty work for her. However, all that being said, I'll give Poison credit for one thing. She can create fireballs, decent size too, and do good damage, yada yada yada, whereas Dan Habiki has his tiny pathetic fireballs. So yeah, Poison is definitely still stronger than Dan. But now finally, it's time to talk about the jobber who I teased earlier, Fang. Yeah, this guy's a giant goofball, and in story mode, loses to pretty much everybody. That's right, winning against Rashid, but only at the start. Later on, Rashid gets the run back and destroys Fang. So yeah, the guy's a laughingstock, losing to pretty much everybody despite being one of Bison's high-ranking henchmen. He's a 4 Heavenly King, which is the title Bison gives to his strongest men, and yet Fang's out here losing fights left and right. Thankfully, he got replaced by Aki in Street Fighter 6, who's superior in every single way. Her attacks look cooler, she's less goofy, and her personality is way more psychotic. So yeah, Capcom, just pretend that Fang never existed. We're okay with that. Give us Aki in the future games. Alright everyone, last but not least, it's time for the Goofballs tier. Keep in mind, some of these warriors are actually kind of legit. They're nowhere near Ryu or Ken, those guys, but compared to other weak characters, they're more legit. So for example, Rufus. This guy might be a giant goofball with silly looking attacks and all that stuff, but the man's actually legit. Against a regular human, he'd kick their ass, but against world warriors, he's gonna get destroyed and look really silly the entire time. Which is unfortunate when you realize Rufus originally looked like this. Yeah, and his name was King Cobra, but for some reason Capcom changed him to this, and he's forever a meme. Anyways, personally, I hate Rufus and hope he never returns in Street Fighter. He was fine in 4, okay? I don't want him erased from that game. He can stay there, it's fine with me, but I'm just saying don't bring him back, okay? Give us a different goofy character, because I can't stand looking at Rufus. He's so ugly. Unlike the next character, Hakan. This man is actually visually interesting. He's got a fun gameplay mechanic too. Then again, I'm biased because I love grapplers, but lore-wise, Hakan's actually a world-class fighter. However, the man has 0 confirmed wins under his belt against other world warriors. In other words, there's no canon fights against other Street Fighters where he's won. Then on top of that, come on, the man's power-up is covering himself in oil, so I seriously doubt he's a powerful fighter. He's okay in his own right, but still definitely a goofball. When compared to 90% of Street Fighters, he's gonna lose. Then we have Saddam, a character that I bet many of you watching have never heard of before because he's been missing ever since the Alpha series. Then before that, he was a boss in the side-scrolling beat-em-ups. He's actually one of the leaders of the Mad Gear gang, so in his own right, Saddam is kinda powerful. In fact, I think Guy himself says, "You're kinda legit, Saddam. Out of all the people I fought, I kinda respect you." So take that for what it's worth. Saddam is a weeaboo, I think, or maybe he's a Japanophile, as they would say. The man's obsessed with Japanese culture despite not being Japanese himself, and as a result, he respects Japanese fighters in Street Fighter more than anyone else. But now finally, we've gotta talk about Birdie, because while this man might be an absolute goofball, he's also canonically beaten Chun-Li. Yeah, in Street Fighter 5. So that's after the Alpha series, when Chun-Li is stronger, and yet Birdie still got the better of her. Which is unfortunate. I'm a big fan of Chun-Li, and wish the writers would stop disrespecting her, but hey, I made this full video talking about Chun-Li's L's in Street Fighter, and how canonically she's only ever beaten Fang. Across every Street Fighter game, that's her only canon win. Which sounds crazy, but it's true. Click this video right now if you don't believe me. I'll leave a link in the pinned comment as well if you want to click down there. The video explains everything. But yeah, Birdie's one of those weird characters that's hard to call weak, very similar to Rufus, because mostly we see him losing, but every now and then he does something impressive, like block machine guns with his chains. What are those chains made of that they block bullets? Then also look at his super right here. The man is jump roping with the opponents, so he's clearly very, very strong. But maybe, just like Dan, he's got his own reverse plot armor or something. There we have it everyone, the weakest characters in Street Fighter. Like mentioned earlier, this video was tough to make since most Street Fighter characters are legit in their own right. Even El Fuerte, despite being very goofy, is a top class fighter. Along with Blanca, who's also very goofy, and even Sakura, who's a high school girl, yet very powerful in the universe of Street Fighter. In the actual lore, she does some impressive stuff, like fighting Balrog to a standstill. Yeah, the Balrog, who keep in mind is considered the strongest boxer in the world, and yet Sakura went toe-to-toe with him. She didn't win, but she survived, so that's impressive. Anyways, I digress. Most characters in Street Fighter are legit, but today we ranked all the losers. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like down below. It helps the channel out a ton. Then finish that combo by subscribing and ringing that bell so you never miss any future videos. Make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.